Sometimes Ivan still dreamt of Siberia, and how the horrible, dreadful vastness of it seemed to stretch out forever. He remembered how it felt impossible to escape that place, how a mechanic's son in a nearly empty mining town might be born and die in the same hospital, decades apart, without ever tasting the salt of the sea or standing in the beating heart center of an actual city. Sometimes he dreamt of his mother, pale and blonde, speaking his real, full name and promising him he was destined for more than that place, for more than the permafrost earth, Serbian nights, and blue-green ribbons on the horizon, and a cold so fierce that it burned when he breathed in. No matter what he dreamt, though, he still woke up in his efficiency apartment provided by Umbral, in a bed that was too soft for his back, brewing coffee so strong a black that it actually made him feel alive for a few minutes at a time. Ivan had become something more than the mechanic's son, but to him it felt like he had traded one prison for another. But at least the one he was in was of his own choosing. Sort of. He discovered his talent for working with electronics when he was just 12. The school he attended managed to bring in some prehistoric-looking laptops, and while the other kids spent their time hunting and pecking on the keyboards and gawking at the screens, Ivan seemed to pour himself into the old machine. He became a part of it, and within days knew it better inside and out than he knew his own body. It was wondrous, a miracle to the boy. At first, he had gotten detention for tearing the things apart and putting them back together better and faster. But soon enough, one of his teachers reported his prowess to someone in the government sphere. Within days, Ivan's parents were getting calls telling them that their son had earned a scholarship to attend a prestigious private school in Moscow. It would come with a job already waiting for him when he finished school 8 years later, earning more yearly than his father had in his entire life. The only catch? He'd be working for the Russian military when he graduated. If he did well enough, they wouldn't force him through the same physical training as the other soldiers. But he was still going to be indebted to the government for a good portion of his life if they took the opportunity. Despite that, all his parents saw was a chance for a better life for their only son. What was the problem with a government job anyway? Sure, megacorporations ruled the world, and individual government entities were a shadow of what they had once been, but the Kozlovs didn't know that. They didn't even have internet access. So, Ivan's parents had kissed his wind-chapped cheeks and loaded him onto a train, destined for a better life, or so they thought. His scholarship wasn't a lie, really. They kept their word for the most part, but only in the most basic sense. He went to that prestigious school, got to live in the comfortable, warm dormitories with other boys his age, but that wasn't all. Ivan only went to class half the day. The other half, he spent training. Sat in front of a computer for hours on end, Ivan was trained to breach any network, take down any mainframe. Then they would have him studying the hardware of it all, using his hands and not his mind to tear things apart and examine the wiry guts. He learned these things alongside a few other kids his age, but there were also full-grown soldiers too. It was the latter group that became resentful as Ivan shot to the top of all the classes, outshining even the professors assigned to him. Ivan Kozlov was brilliant, a bright and shining thing, shackled to a failing government for the foreseeable future. The years passed, and Ivan's shackles started to chafe. At first, it made him feel terrible. Was he being ungrateful? Wasn't this what he wanted? To be more than the sum of all his parts? But the boy missed his parents even if he didn't miss his home. And he missed the never-ending reach of the dreams he once allowed himself to have. Now, he knew what he would be when he was an adult, without a doubt. A tool, even if he was a shiny one. At 17, Ivan had learned everything he could, and more. He had surged past all the Russian government could teach him, and was learning everything else independently. They started having him back up already active agents in cyber attacks. And he was shocked at how shallow and boring it all was. Move money here, steal intel there. Was that all he would ever be destined for? Where was the excitement? The groundbreaking, heart-pounding work he had imagined? That's when he saw his escape route. During one job he was assisting with, unpaid of course, Ivan and the rest of the team ran into something that none of them had ever seen before. An endless, almost impenetrable firewall, more complex and convoluted than any of them could imagine. "What the hell is this?" Ivan asked, looking at the older man next to him that was running lead on the digital attack. "An automatic failure for us. That's what it is," he spit back, pressing the heels of his hands against his eyes. "Volga." There were numerous megacorporations that all but ruled the world, and the biggest one in Russia was the Volga firm. It was a shock to his system to hear that Volga's technology was light years ahead of the government's. They had equipment and inventions that he had never even heard of before, and their agents were free to do as they pleased, morals be damned, as long as they got results. In that moment, Ivan knew Volga was his way out of the contract his parents had signed. All he had to do was prove himself an asset worth acquiring, and he was sure Volga would do anything to gain a man like Ivan. But he also knew that he only had one chance, because once he made his move, the Russian government would castigate him if Volga didn't decide to pull him out. Volga wouldn't want anything from the government. They were above that, and probably already had access to everything the government knew. So what did they want? What could he provide them that would make him stand out? One megacorporation clung to the title as leader of the pack, and had done so for years, and it wasn't Volga. The Umbrel Group, based out of the United States, was the corporation to beat. So, Ivan thought, if he could breach Umbrel's cybersecurity system and steal even a little morsel of information, he could offer it to Volga and barter it for his freedom. He waited until night had fallen and took his private laptop down to the computer lab. Ivan worked in the dark, face lit up by the anemic blue light of his screen, and began the most arduous task of his entire life. The young man started at 11 p.m. He didn't crack the surface of Umbrel's servers until 3:20 a.m., sweat pouring down his face from stress. Alarms were going off at Umbrel's HQ. He was sure of it. Going in soft and quiet had been impossible. So Ivan had to brute force his way in, stealing a short list of private contacts before fleeing the server and shutting the proverbial door behind him. As quickly as he could, he opened the contact list, planning to send it to Volga straight away and demand they pull him from the school as soon as he could. Except when he opened the file, which should have contained 10 names with contact information attached. There was just one name, over and over again, along with a bone-chilling message attached to the end.
Ivan Kozlov, we see you.
It read 10 times over. Shaking, He slammed the laptop shut and felt tears pressing against the back of his eyeballs as his panic built and built. Ivan didn't sleep that night. He laid in his dormitory bed and stared at the ceiling, waiting for the sun to rise and his fate to make itself known. School security came at 7 a.m., and Ivan stood without them even saying a word to indicate who they needed. He walked between the two guards, fists clenched to hide how hard he was quivering. The terror was so strong it made him nauseous. In the office of the school's director, Ivan pulled at the sleeves of his uniform and waited. The middle-aged man behind the desk was a different one than when he first arrived all those years ago. He looked exhausted, and he held Ivan's gaze for long minutes before sighing heavily. "You have two options, Mr. Kozlov. Expulsion and potentially extradition to be tried for cyber theft in the United States. Or you can leave now. We'll mark you as graduated and Umbral agents will immediately pick you up." The second sentence had his head spinning. "I don't understand." "We wanted 10 years of your time once you were done here, you foolish young man. They want your secrecy and your obedience for the rest of your life." With that said, the director turned his computer monitor around so Ivan could see it, and there was a man he had never seen before on a video call. He was dressed in a sharp black suit, hair combed back from his eyes, and expensive glasses perched on his nose. There was a knowing smirk on his face. "Mr. Kozlov, I'm here on behalf of the Umbral Group, and more specifically, their covert operations sector, the Eclipse Initiative. We are both upset and impressed at what you could accomplish on your own last night, but we can't let you get away with such a crime. We will make it simple for you to atone for your sins, though, if you're willing." "I stole nothing," Ivan insisted. "It was just a document with my name on it, over and over." "Ah, yes, but it was the intention that matters. Don't you agree?" The man on the screen leaned forward and steepled his fingers together. "So, here's my offer to you. I can send a flight for you, and you'll be at headquarters by evening, undergoing the initiation process. And once your training is done, you'll have access to world-class, cutting-edge technology, and the chance to be challenged. New jobs, new equipment, new locations, all the time." "And what's the catch, exactly?" The man chuckled. "You'll belong to us, Mr. Kozlov. And if you try to pull something like you did last night, it will be not just your life that is forfeit, but your family's life as well. Loyalty is the most important attribute that we require in our employees. What do you say?" There was no question. Ivan had aimed to be recruited by Volga, but caught the eye of Umbral instead. For better or for worse. The image of his mother, her sweet, pale face smiling when she hugged him during the last holiday he visited home, flashed through his mind's eye. It was a risk, but he had to know. "Will I be paid?" When the director gasped at the audacity, and the man from Umbral raised his eyebrows, Ivan quickly added, "Only so I could support my parents." Umbral's ambassador sighed. "Yes, once your training is complete, you will receive a handsome stipend. Now you're testing my patience. What is your answer?" Ivan gave up trying to hide his excitement, letting it flow through him freely. "Yes, I accept. I'll start packing." "Good. We look forward to seeing you soon, Mr. Kozlov." Umbral broke him down to pieces. To the very atoms of himself. They took his body and ran it into the ground until he came back stronger, faster. At a rate that should have been impossible, they filled his mind with more and more information until he was sure it could hold no more. But then it did. Ivan learned to fight, to shoot, and how to let his identity fall away until he was just a lump of clay, a blank slate, ready to be added to any team within the Eclipse Initiative. Then finally, they took his name. The day he joined the Advanced Recon and Extraction Squad, known as Ares, he stopped being Ivan and became Cipher. It was his code name, but it was more than that. It was the badge that said he was an elite soldier, one of Umbral's top electronic warfare specialists. He always knew, in the back of his mind, that he had sold himself and all his talents to Umbral. Cipher should have been the obedient agent that he promised. But even after he had been destroyed and reforged, there was that little spark inside of him. The spark of curiosity. And while he lived for the moments when brand new technology was put into his hands, Cipher was bitter that he was dropped into the field with his team, repeatedly, with little to no information. So, he skimmed off the top, just enough information so that he knew what his team's missions involved. It wasn't until the Chimera incident that he ever went below the surface level, and he regretted it immediately. What he found terrified him, and it made him off his game for the entire mission. But like a drug, he kept going back. The things that Umbral was involved in were so surreal that he couldn't stop. Cipher was addicted. Which was why, when he and the rest of Ares was dropped into the frigid Svalbard night, Cipher already knew what monstrous thing was hiding deep in the sandstone mountain. It was why Hawkeye, his friend, his squad mate, a man that was supposed to be a brother to him, a man he trusted, wrapped his arms around Cipher's neck, pressed the barrel of a pistol to the base of his skull. Cipher knew too much, and that was not acceptable. But at least, when they were first dropped, when the chopper left, he snatched one look at the northern lights in the sky and felt the chill on his face. It reminded him for a moment of those empty, Siberian expanses of his childhood. A few hours before he died, Cipher closed his eyes, breathed in until it burned from the cold, and for those few, precious, shivering seconds, he was home.